Welcome to our webinar on building school culture from the inside out. Today we're going to be focusing on developing your message. And what that really means is developing messaging on campus that your students will take ownership of. At Teen Truth, what we really like to focus on is empowering student voice. And we believe that when schools have strong messaging on campus, when students really feel connected to slogans or other key messages on campus, that they start to take ownership of those messages, and that's what helps them take ownership of their school culture. So, what is our goal for today? Well, my name is JC Pohl. I am the president and CEO of Teen Truth. I'm very honored to be here speaking with you today. I'm hoping to spend about 30 or 40 minutes with you, and my goal during this webinar is to teach you strategies that you can use to build school culture. And my goal is to teach you strategies that you can use right now to start building school culture, that you can start implementing immediately. Because I believe school culture is one of the most important things that we can be doing on campus. I've been very fortunate in my career. I have traveled this country. I've been able to speak on over 1,000 school campuses in the last 10 years. And I tell you, no matter where I'm at, no matter what state I'm in, what city I'm in, what demographic or population I'm working with, a lot of it comes down to school culture. You know, I can feel that school culture when I walk on campus. And that's why it's so important to me, because research has proven that school culture, kids feeling connected on campus, helps increase test scores. It helps increase academic performance. Graduation rates go up when kids feel connected on campus. We also know that when kids feel connected on campus, a lot of the social emotional issues go down. So, bad decision making, poor choices, risky behaviors all go down when we have a strong school culture. And I say that because in visiting all these schools, I often can feel it. I can feel the school culture. Everyone who works for Teen Truth, we get to visit all kinds of schools. We all can feel it. We can feel it within minutes of walking on campus. And that, I think, really speaks to why school culture is so important. Because when a guest comes on your campus, or a parent comes on your campus, or a student or a staff member walks on your campus, we want them to feel welcomed, we want them to feel connected, and we want them to feel like they are a part of your school community. Well, your messaging and the way you approach school culture is essential in building that kind of ownership and that kind of relationship with those people walking on your campus. And I believe it so much that at Teen Truth, we have a little saying here. It's kind of a joke, but we say it behind the scenes. And I've found it to be true. And the saying goes like this: no handshake, no water bottle, no fun. If the principal doesn't come out and shake our hand, if nobody offers us a bottle of water, well, that day of work, whether we're doing assemblies or trainings or leadership summits, that day of work probably isn't going to be that much fun. The kids are probably going to be a little loose. They might be a little bit disrespectful, and that culture is going to be a little bit off. And I don't say that because I need a bottle of water, or I don't say that because I need that handshake. I say it because it's a representation of how the adults and students on that campus are approaching a guest who comes on campus. I know how busy administrators are. Administrators are, so busy. I mean, they're running around like crazy at all hours of the day. But if a principal or a vice principal or some key administrator takes the time to walk into that gym or walk into that theater and shake my hand, that tells me that they know that they have a guest on campus and that they want to communicate to me why the assembly or why the training is important to them and how it might benefit their students. And obviously that helps me as a speaker make the assembly even better for their kids. The bottle of water, again, it's not like we need a bottle of water, but that talks about service. Like, think about if you walk into a Hilton or you go to Disneyland, that level of service. So when people on campus are willing to kind of think that way, oh, an outsider's here, he's going to be working here all day, let's offer him a bottle of water, 2 bottles of water. Well, that's indicative of what their school culture is like, because that's probably how they're treating their students and their staff on campus, and it kind of ripples through the school culture. So it's important to realize that school culture is something that you can feel, and it's something very tangible. And I believe this webinar will give you a lot of insight into how to start building a great school culture on your campus. By staying for this webinar, we will offer you a special gift at the end. I promise you we'll make this webinar worth your time. I know some of you that came to this webinar might have come to it because you already downloaded a free version of my book, Building School Culture from the Inside Out. But we will have additional gifts and additional offerings for you at the end. So I really hope that you can stay till the end of this. Also, with regards to this webinar, I want you to know that you are watching a video stream off YouTube right now. This is not some webinar that's going to be deleted in 3 days. I'm not going to take it down after 10 days. I'm not going to do, like those guys on, you always see these people on Facebook or on emails saying, watch this right now. I'm going to take it down in 2 days. I'm not going to do that to you. Like, I'm hoping this webinar is a resource that you can come back to if you want to, revisit the idea of creating good messaging on campus, or I'm hoping it's something you might be able to share with someone. At Teen Truth, it's kind of just like that water bottle, right? Like, we want to serve you, and we want to help you build school culture. We want to help you create great messaging on campus. And unless we're able to come to your campus, this webinar is kind of the second best way that we can do it. So take this as our gift to you, and know that we're gonna also offer you a special gift at the end. So for those of you that don't know Teen Truth, what makes Teen Truth different? Well, the reason we believe that we're different is because we're all about harnessing the power of student voice. Our mission is to empower student voice in every aspect of education. So let me take you into our history so you know a little bit about who we are and where we come from. Teen Truth is basically started as a film series. Teen Truth, which you see our anti-bully film right there on the side of the screen. Teen Truth started as a creative response to the Columbine High School shooting. When Columbine happened, we really felt like no one was giving kids a voice around the issue. And long story short, we gave some students cameras. We asked them to film for an entire school year. We took that footage and we made our first film, Teen Truth, an inside look at bullying and school violence. Since then, we've gone on to make more films. So we made a film on drugs and alcohol abuse. We made a film on body image and self-esteem. Not too long ago, we released our fourth film on parenting and family communication. And the beauty about all four of these films is that they're primarily shot by students. So they really give that inside look into the pressures that teenagers are dealing with. And they give that unadulterated look, of kids and how they feel. And the reason I believe our films have been so successful is because we never really set out to tell teenagers what to do. We just wanted to make a movie where we could give them a voice, and we wanted to make something that they could kind of own. And what we found is that Teen Truth is their flag, it's their voice, and it really communicates how they feel. These films are award-winning films. And you can see that they've been used in over 5,000 schools around the world. And we estimate that our reach through our films and our programming, that we've reached about 7 million people around the world. We've actually been in every state in the Union and pretty much all of the Canadian provinces. So we really do a good job covering people here in North America. Additionally, one thing to point out when it comes to our programming is that we have a 60% returning client ratio. And the reason I point that out is because as far as an industry average, that's actually really high. I have a few friends that are, they're friends, but they're also competitors, and they usually around a 10 or 20% returning client ratio. So, we're almost 2 or 3 times greater than our competitors. And the reason I believe that's why that's happening is because our programming works. We are able, because of our messaging and because of our unique proposition with regards to empowering student voice, we're able to get students to make that buy-in. We're able to get students to take that ownership. And whether it's through our assemblies or coming back and implementing our peer-to-peer curriculum or even doing a leadership summit, educators are starting to find that if they can keep us on campus and kind of keep this movement alive, that it helps them as they continue to build school culture. We've been doing this since 2006. All right, we're going into our 12th school year next year, so it's pretty amazing. I never thought that we'd have so much success, but it has been such an amazing ride and just full of so much passion for us. And lastly, one thing I always like to point out, because I know it is very important for many of you watching on this webinar right now, we are research based. So when we created our programming, even when we created our films, we did a lot of focus group testing, we did a lot of surveying of audiences, we collected a lot of data, and we were also fortunate enough many years ago where we had San Jose State actually do a study on our program. So they looked at our assembly program and our film, and they actually did a year-long study at a middle school out in the Bay Area, and they were able to find that there were tangible results that came from our program. And most importantly, I think what really came out of that research that was really cool is that it stuck with the kids throughout the year. Because of our content, because it's so unique and so visceral, that the kids didn't forget it. It stuck with them throughout the year. So we're really, really proud of that. Another thing you might be wondering, some of you on here know me pretty well. Some of you might not know me at all. So who am I? Before we get into the deep content, let's kind of look at that. Well, like I said, my name's JC Pohl. I'm actually the president and CEO of Teen Truth. I'm also one of the co-founders. This webinar is all about building your message. So one of the things I felt that was important for me to highlight for you is that I do have a background in storytelling. Before Teen Truth, I spent many years working for Disney and Warner Brothers. I worked on a lot of great content for both studios. Content like Harry Potter, 300, a lot of the great Disney and Pixar movies back in the day. And so I have a lot of training on how to tell stories and how to showcase a hero and how to make sure a story sticks and that the story works. You know, how to look at a script, how to take a 120-page script and actually make it work. Well, I did that for many years in Hollywood, and Teen Truth kind of took me away from that life in Hollywood. But I did really enjoy my time working there for Disney and Warner Brothers, and I do feel that that will kind of come through in today's presentation. You can also see there I'm a co-founder. In 2006 is when we launched. I've personally, I said earlier, I've been on about 1,000 school campuses, so that equates to over 1 million people that I've worked with, whether it's through conferences, trainings, keynoting, or doing breakout session at various conferences. I've reached over 1 million people, so I've seen people and students and educators in every different type of situation you can imagine. All right, I've dealt with every different type of school in every different type of city that you can imagine. Also, one thing I thought that was fun to highlight on here, because I know a lot of you are probably leadership teachers or involved in student activities, is that I actually was student council president. I was always very involved in student council growing up in high school. I was also involved on the football team. I always had kind of leadership positions at school, even when I went into college. So when I speak about activities on campus and when we talk about building school culture, I want you to know that I've done it now as an adult, but I also did it as a student. And it was something that I was very passionate about as a student. And I'm kind of honored to have that come full circle in my career. And lastly, before we start moving into the content here, I do want you to know that I am a licensed marriage and family therapy associate. So I do have a small private practice here in Austin, Texas, where I do see, I see teenagers, I see couples, I also see families, and I handle some divorce recovery as well. And the reason I wanted to point that out is as a marriage and family therapist, I really believe in the system. And I think when we talk about school culture, we're really talking about the system, right? Just like a family, like I can't tell you how many parents have dropped teenagers off at my office expecting me to, quote, fix their teenager when there's nothing actually wrong with the teenager. It's the system. It's the way the teenager and the adults and everyone in the family system is acting or communicating or relating to each other. So when we look at school culture and when I kind of take a step back and look at Teen Truth programming, I'm always looking at it with that lens as a marriage and family therapy associate. I can't wait till I can remove that associate. I've got to do 1,500 hours of direct counseling on that, but we're getting there. But as a therapist, I'm always kind of looking at things from that lens. All right. So along the way, Teen Truth, we've done some things right. We've done some things really well. I think, we've used our student shot content in a way that's really worked for students because we've related to them. They watch our programming and they watch our films and they say, "That's me. That's how I feel. That's my truth." And so we've always done a really good job inspiring students to tell their truth. And I think we do a great job building school culture. And when I say that, I really mean getting students to take ownership of their school culture. We leave a legacy on campus, which is a message that says be the difference. And so when see our assembly or you experience some of our other programming, it's very clear that if you're going to make a difference on campus, you've really got to take it upon yourself to be the difference. And that has been our slogan and our message as we've moved along for the last 10, 11, 12 years. And even now, as we start to getting into what it takes to make a message, what's interesting here, if you look at this wristband here on the picture, you can actually see that the wristband says "make a difference." All right, make a difference. Those were the first wristbands that we developed, and we found that wasn't really working for our messaging. We wanted it to be the difference. We wanted students. We didn't want to tell them to go make a difference. We wanted to inspire them to be the difference, to take ownership of it. And we noticed when we made that change that it really resonated well with students, and I think it resonated well with schools. So as we start diving into this information, I thought that was something worthwhile pointing out. Now we've also done some things wrong. All right, we've been around for 10 years, so we've had the chance to make some mistakes. And one of the mistakes that I really think the company that we made in the first 5 to 7 years of our business, and it wasn't a mistake like a bad mistake, but it was a mistake in the sense that we were so focused on students that we forgot about the educators. Teen Truth and our film series, it was always about the next film, right? It was always about getting the cameras in the hands of students and giving them a voice, which is our mission, it's our passion. But one of the things that I think we really missed was focusing on what do educators need and how could we create tangible solutions for educators to implement. It wasn't enough for us to just give students a voice and make great films and have awesome assemblies. We needed to create some tangible things that educators could take away and actually implement. And so once I took over as CEO, that's one of the things that I really wanted to focus on was kind of shifting the company from a film-focused company to an educational services company. We needed to provide programs to get students actively engaged on campus, and we need to create those programs so they work after we leave the campus. We can go there, we can get everyone really excited in a assembly, but 2 weeks later, we're going to be gone. So how do we get all that to stick? Well, that's some of the stuff that we're going to be focusing on today. And that's actually why I teamed up with a friend of mine named Ryan McKernan to write a book called Building School Culture from the Inside Out. It's an easy 3-step process with immediate results, and it teaches our student ownership map, which for us is all about your message, your activities, and your people. And that's really what we're going to be focusing on today is your message. The reason we believe that your message is important is because it sets the tone across campus. And as we dig into messaging, you'll see that messaging can be extremely powerful. Think of your favorite brands, think of your favorite commercials, think of your favorite billboards or your favorite movies. They probably had a key message that really stuck with you. And as we travel the country, when we see schools that have messaging that's done right, you can see the students really take ownership of that message. The other part of our map you can see, so you can see right here, isn't this cute? MAP, that's the student ownership map. The second part of the map is your activities. We're not going to focus on that as much today, but we do that a lot with our leadership summits where we really want to focus on your activity program. We really want to ask the hard questions like who's in charge of your activity program? Are your students empowered to run activities on campus? And are these activities socially and emotionally focused activities? So we're not going to dig too much into that today, but maybe one thing to jot down or one note to take is to ask yourself, if you really want to build school culture, are your activities socially, emotionally focused? Are you doing pajama day? It's like, what's pajama day really do for a student who's hurting? Or maybe for someone who's having self-esteem or body image issues? Not much. But if you turn that day into, I don't know, dress comfortable day or be yourself day, suddenly that takes on a different meaning, right? It's a socially, emotionally focused activity that has purpose. And the last component of the student ownership map is your people. And what we mean by that is just forming great relationships on campus. With social media and cell phones, it's ironic. We're more connected now than ever, but it really seems like we're more disconnected now than ever. And so our answer to that is a peer-to-peer program that we've written. It's a curriculum called the Rising Up Coaching Program, where we put students in a position to mentor each other. And whether it's eighth graders working with sixth graders or juniors working with freshmen, we've seen real relationships get built through that model. And that's why we actually titled the book Building School Culture from the Inside Out. Building school culture from the inside out, because we feel that the best way to build school culture from the inside out is have your students take ownership and have them drive a lot of the relationships and a lot of the good stuff on campus. All right, so enough of the business. Let's dig into what today is all about, and that is about your message. Now, a lot of the stuff I'm going to be teaching today is based on my own opinions and my own experience, specifically working at Disney, but also this fabulous book called Made to Stick. It's written by Chip Heath and Dan Heath. They're brothers. One of them is a professor at Stanford. And if today's webinar really kind of gets your juices flowing and you want to go deeper into how to really create messaging that sticks, you got to read this book. It's a very easy to read book, and I love what they say right here: why some ideas survive and others die. And so when we look at school slogans and school mottos and how to build messaging on campus, it's important for us to kind of look closely at that. So the things we're going to be looking at today is, how do you build great messages? And the first thing we're going to look at is, how do you create a great slogan? How do you create mottos, slogans on campus that work? Well, from what we know from Chip and Dan Heath, is if we're going to create a slogan, it's got to be simple, it's got to be positive, and it's got to be direct. All right, so we will dig into that here in a few minutes, and I think you're really going to enjoy that part of this webinar. The second thing that we're going to look at today is, who is your message for? So it's not enough just to come up with a great slogan. We've really got to conceptualize, who is this slogan for? So we're going to kind of dig into that a little bit more as well. And if you think of maybe some of your favorite brands, like, I don't know, like one of my favorite brands is Under Armour. Under Armour knows exactly who they're creating their clothing for, right? That high end to middle end athlete that really wants to perform at a higher level. So everything that they're creating their messaging around is built, with that person in mind. And the last thing that we're going to look at today is how to create a story that showcases your message. So now that you know your slogan and you know who it's for, how can you create a story that will help that message stick? All right, so let's keep digging into this. So when we look at slogans, some slogans work great. Some slogans are amazing. We all know "Just Do It." When I say "Just Do It," what do you say? You say Nike, right? Protect this house. Hopefully you say Under Armour. I just gave you that hint a few minutes ago. But you can see with Nike and Under Armour that they've built slogans that really work. They're both 3 words each. They're very simple. They work really well on a T-shirt or on a stadium, a sign at a stadium, and they connotate what that brand represents. Just do it. Especially if you think about when they came out with that. Well, that was probably the 80s, right? When Michael Jordan and all that kind of stuff was getting going. This idea that if you wear Nike, just get out there and do it. Just be that athlete, be active, have fun. Protect this house. Like I said, Under Armour's always been about, creating strength and being stronger, which is obviously similar to what Nike's doing, but that's why they're competitors. But the other great slogan that I really love, being that I live down here in Texas now, and I find this slogan really interesting. You can see it's 4 words. Don't mess with Texas. Now, you've heard that slogan before. Don't mess with Texas. I know you've heard that slogan before. But what's so cool about this slogan is that in 1985, this slogan was actually developed as a littering campaign slogan. All right, it was a commercial that they developed, and they had two football players from the Cowboys. I think it was like Deacon Jones. I forget who it was, but on the commercial, he picked up a can or something, like a can on the side of the road, and he crushed it. And he said, "Don't mess with Texas." And as a result, that campaign was highly effective. It stuck, right? It stuck, and it became part of the culture of Texas. And now, as Texas is kind of known as this independent state, it's a little, it's considered a little bit different than most of the states in the country. It's pretty clear that if you live here, don't mess with Texas. We all kind of go together. We all run together. We all help each other. We have the kind of that Southern culture of honor down here in Texas. So this slogan, while it started as an anti-litter campaign, has really been accepted into the core of the culture here in the state of Texas. Now, some slogans don't work. A quick story, I changed the mascot here. Actually, it wasn't a panther, but I changed the mascot. One of my clients, they came up to me before the assembly, and they had this sheet, and their mascot was the Panthers, for the sake of this story, let's just say. And they showed me this sheet, and so for every letter of the word panther, they had like something built out. Like, so for Panth, they had something about their school culture, some sort of slogan. And she asked me to read it and to pull it into the assembly. And it's like, well, it was really well thought out, and I'm sure it had a lot of great intent behind it. It's like, dude, like, I can't even remember anything about that sheet that she showed me, let alone pull it into an assembly. Like, how could I actually, you tell me to pull protect this house into an assembly, I can do that. You tell me to pull something that represents 8 letters into an assembly, like, there's no way that I can do it. It's not repeatable. It's not simple. It's not direct. The students aren't going to be able to easily repeat it. So we found when it comes to slogans and messaging, it's important that it's easy to repeat. I mentioned earlier how our slogan is "Be the Difference." So this is kind of a fun story I want to share with you. This is Donna McNeil right here. She's one of my most favorite clients. She's up in Elk Grove at Albiani Middle School, and she actually used to be at a different middle school. I think it was T.R. Smedberg. I forget the name of it. But funny story. So I was speaking at the high school next door. Literally, this high school is in the exact same parking lot as her high school, or her middle school. And I call Donna and I say, listen, I'm speaking at the high school in the morning. I'd love to speak to your students in the afternoon. I'll give you a discount. And she's like, nope, not interested. I don't believe in assemblies. Assemblies are a complete waste of time. Get out of my face. And I said, Donna, let me come in there and show you how important assemblies are. I will do this. I'll do this for you for $500, I think I said. And I'll give you your money back if you're not happy. All right, I'll give you your money back immediately if you're not happy with it. So she goes, fine. You can speak to my 7th graders. So I said, okay. So I went in there. Oh, man, I spoke to those 7th graders that afternoon, and I probably had fire coming out of my mouth. I gave them 110% everything that I had, and I gave them like the best Teen Truth performance I could possibly give. And the beautiful thing that happened, so at the end of the program, I just thought of it at the moment. I said, all you 7th graders, if you're going to be the difference on campus tomorrow, I want you to wear orange. And I want you to show all the 8th graders that this is your school and that you're willing to be the difference here. And guess what happened? The next day, like, almost all the 7th graders wore orange. And Donna was amazed, and she loved it. And she ended up, so she's an awesome activity director. She ended up creating these orange Be the Difference days. And you can see right here that Be the Difference became a slogan on campus. It was on their stationery. This is their yearbook here. And they did all these days where the kids would dress in orange, and it'd be this Be the Difference day. And what's really interesting is here we are years later, and she's still a good friend of mine. She's still doing these days, and she's doing them, I think, like once a month. Now, they've taken on different slogans now, like Kindness Revolution and other types of fun slogans, but she's really used these days and this idea of being the difference to drive school culture, and the kids love it. And I promise you, something like this is building connection on campus. So that's what we're really talking about. So how do you make a great message? What are the components? If you took a class on branding and you took a class on building a great slogan for a great brand, what would they teach you? All right. Well, this is what I would say. These are some of the common things that you should look at. We want to highlight what makes your school great. When we think about a brand and think about a message, we want to highlight what makes the brand great. Like I said about Under Armour earlier, they want their brand to be of strength, that you have the will to compete. So let's highlight that in everything that we do. So it's no wonder they use the word protect this house, because that would only be done by someone with a considerable amount of strength, right? In your slogan, we also want to explain your commitment to your culture. So you want it to come across very genuine, and you want it to come across as if you're committed to this slogan too. This is something that you would want to live by. Of course, as we saw in the Panthers analogy, we want to keep it short. When I showed you just do it and protect this house and don't mess with Texas, 3 or 4 words, tops, 3 or 4 words. It's got to be short. It's got to be short in order to be repeatable and to be used in an effective way on campus. All right, we can't put a big old sentence up on the wall. We've just got to have those 3 or 4 words that are the best 3 or 4 words that represent your school culture. We need to make sure it's pleasing to the ear. All right, when we talk about it being repeatable, it's got to be something that sounds good. All right, it's got to be something that has some rhythm to it, or has kind of a cool vibe to it. All right, that's another thing that's going to make it repeatable. Again, kind of what I said earlier is we want it to be honest, and we want to be giving in our statement. I mentioned earlier about Hilton and Disney. One thing both those companies do really well is they always come from a place of service in everything that they do. So we want to make sure that whatever we're trying to communicate in our school culture also comes from that place of giving, right? Like we want the students to benefit from this. We want the culture to benefit from this. So as you develop your slogan, ask yourself that question. Now, most importantly, we've got to get admin and teacher buy-in. All right, so this can't be something that we just create 2 or 3 people someday in August before school starts and just kind of shove it down everyone's throat. All right, we've got to get admin and teacher buy-in, and we've got to get student buy-in. All right, I promise you, there is no Fortune 500 company that would ever launch a new branding campaign or a new slogan without doing focus group testing. So as you create your slogan, are you doing focus group testing? Do you have key teachers involved? Like, go find that science teacher or that math teacher or that music teacher. Get him or her involved in this conversation. Get students involved. And don't just get your student council president. Go up and ask that gang member. Go up and ask that skater kid. Go ask that mean girl. Go ask that kid who's an outcast, who doesn't have a lot of friends on campus. Ask them what they think about your slogan. And ask them how to make it better, or what would make them feel more ownership. All right, so those are ways that we can make a message great. One last thing just to prove to you how important messaging is, I want to share with you just one more story from the road, and that was a time when I was in Lancaster, California. All right, when I got to Lancaster, I saw this awesome display that was headed by the mayor. Of all the schools, all the organizations in the town were all united around this slogan, "Not in our town." And when it came to bullying in Lancaster, California, it was very clear that it was not acceptable in our town. Every school I spoke at, not in our town. Again, see, 4 words. 1, 2, 3, 4. Not in our town, up on the walls, not in our town. Banners hanging, as I drove down Main Street, banners hanging from the streetlights, not in our town. All right, this campaign was highly effective. And in fact, they did some research around it. And at Del Sur Middle School, what they found is that 62%, before the campaign, 62% of the students at Del Sur Middle School felt safe and connected on campus. All right, after the campaign, and this wasn't really something that I was involved in, but I believe this statement is true. I believe this was only a campaign. I don't think there was like a lot of bells and whistles to it. It was only a campaign. After the campaign, 92% of the students at the same school, at Del Sur Middle School, reported feeling safe and connected on campus. That really illustrates the power of messaging, right? So if you have a slogan on campus, ask yourself, is it working? All right, is it driving culture the same way that Not in Our Town is driving culture? Is it driving culture the same way that Donna's doing it with Be the Difference in her Orange Days, her Kindness Revolution days? All right, because we need to be getting students to take ownership of the slogan, and then we start to see that shift in culture. So hopefully you can, excuse me, hopefully you can start to kind of see the difference there. All right, so moving on. Now that we know what our slogan is and maybe what we want to communicate, who is your message for? That might seem weird. JC. It's for the kids on my campus. It's for the teachers on my campus. Yeah, that's not going to cut it in a marketing class or a marketing meeting, right? Not at a Fortune 500 company. Who is your message for? You and key team members of yours, I would really recommend that you sit down and have a 30, 45-minute conversation on who is your ideal student. Who is your ideal student? Like, what do they represent? What do they do? How do they act? What do they look like? What do they not look like? Who is your ideal student? And I don't have a lot of great examples from the education world, but I thought there were two great examples from the corporate world that I could share. And Chip and Dan Heath talk about this in their book. You know, when you look at Trader Joe's, which is a supermarket from where I grew up out in California, Trader Joe's is like, they're kind of like Whole Foods, but they're not as expensive. They're trying to do the whole healthy food thing, but they're cheaper. So Trader Joe's describes their target customer as an unemployed college professor who drives a very, very used Volvo. All right? That is very specific. They know exactly who their customer is if they can say an unemployed college professor who drives a very, very used Volvo. So when they're sitting around making decisions about their store, about various products they might want to bring into their store, they ask themselves, would an unemployed college professor who drives a very, very used Volvo buy this? And if he or she wouldn't, well, we're not going to carry it. This easily tells them if a product, oops, sorry, I got a typo there. This easily tells them if a product will hit or miss. Also, Southwest Airlines. I fly Southwest all around the country. They are my go-to airline. I know they're a lot of people's go-to airline. Let's look at what they have to say about their company. I took this off their website. Southwest Airlines is dedicated to the highest quality of customer service delivered with a sense of warmth, friendliness, individual pride, and company spirit. Now, if you've flown Southwest Airlines, you have seen that personified, right? Every single one. They are so good at this. They must train these people night and day on this stuff. But every person you interact with, even when flights are delayed 2 hours and there's a rainstorm and everyone's all upset at the airport, in general, 95% of the time, that gate agent or those people are operating with a sense of warmth, friendliness, individual pride, and company spirit. So Southwest knows exactly who they're operating for and what they should be doing. Are you able to articulate this for your messaging on campus? Are you able to articulate this for your student leaders, for your staff? You need to spend the time to really be able to articulate this. Now, I brought up finding your ideal student. So let's give you some points to maybe take away that can help you with that question. When we talk about our ideal student, we saw Trader Joe's with the unemployed college professor. So when you think about your ideal student, is there a particular student that comes to mind from your career? Maybe someone that just really was this just student who you just thought really exemplified school culture for you and really exemplified all that was great on your campus. ask yourself these questions. Like, take a pen out and write this down. What made her special? What made her so great? What made him so memorable? When you're sitting back and thinking about this kid, like, what made them so memorable? Was it the way they acted in class? Was it the way they performed on the field? Was it the way that they talked to kids on campus? Was it the way they related to you or the other teachers on campus? What made them so memorable? And how did this student find success on your campus? How did they find success on your campus? And does your ideal student reflect your community? This is an important one. Many schools I go to are so diverse. So you might be thinking back, all right, sitting back thinking, I'm going to develop my ideal student. Well, that can be complicated in today's world, right? Kids are really diverse. They're dealing with a lot of social, different places they're coming from socially and economically. So as we kind of build out your ideal student, does this person, this mythical person, reflect your community? And that's very important that as you create school culture, if you ask yourself, is it reflecting your community? All right? Because we don't want the branding and messaging to be off target. And lastly, what would get your least ideal student on campus right now to feel connected and belonged to your campus? Ooh, that's a heavy question, right? You answer that. That's the whole answer of the webinar right there, right? What would get that least ideal student on your campus right now to feel connected? Well, I think you should spend some time thinking about this, and I think you should go pull that kid into your office or get that kid. Don't pull them in your office, actually. Don't do that. Find them out on the campus. Find them in a place where they're comfortable and ask them what would help them feel connected. What would help them feel more belonging on your campus? All right. So those are ways that we can kind of build out who our ideal student is. Now you need to take all this. You need to take all this that we just went over. Okay. Take all this and put it into a simple 8 to 12 word statement. So that's work right there. All right, that is the work of creating good messaging. We go back to the Trader Joe's. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 words. All right, Southwest obviously has a little bit more than 10. But you need to take all this and pull it into an 8 to 12 word statement. If you can do that, you'll be able to clearly know who your ideal student is, and that way anytime you think of an activity or you think of messaging or you think of something you need to create for your campus, you and your fellow administrators and educators have that person in mind. All right, that's how we stay on target. Lastly is creating a story. I mentioned earlier how my background is in storytelling. As a producer, I've taken a ton of classes at UCLA. Disney was actually really good to me where I got to take a lot of classes and go to workshops there as well. So I love storytelling. And when we look at what makes something stick, a good story is remembered for all of eternity. All right. Think about the great Greek heroes like Odysseus and Achilles or the war, the war they had with the Trojan horse. Like these stories, these heroes, they echo on for eternity, right? We've seen it in the movies. Like think of Gladiator, like the gladiators. They wanted to echo on for eternity. Well, great stories will do that. And when you look at the story of Odysseus or Achilles, these are stories that have lasted for thousands of years. All right, these stories have transcended generations. Wars have come and gone, yet these stories have remained. And for many years, many years, these stories were passed down by word of mouth. All right, so when we have a great story, it sticks. It gets communicated. Great stories have to follow the hero's journey. Every story has a hero. Every school culture story, everything that we just worked on here, this is your hero, right? This is your hero right here. This ideal student is the hero of your story. And I don't have time to teach you the hero's journey. You got to take like a screenwriting class if you want to learn that. But long story short is the hero The hero always, like, think of Star Wars, right? Like, you have Luke Skywalker. The hero always starts in a place where he doesn't have the skills or the talents to really be great. But then he often goes into this extraordinary world. Sometimes he'll go in, or she, he or she will go into a darker world. They will learn something. They will learn skills. They will face conflict. They will often have some sort of mentor. And then in the end of the story, Luke Skywalker comes back as the Jedi, and he blows up the Death Star, right? And or kills Darth Vader or whatever he does. The hero kind of goes into the darkness without the skills, gains the skills while he or she is in conflict, and comes back with a positive trait that creates that positive outcome. So think of a time. So we need to create your story for your campus, right? So think of a time when a student took action, which represented the value you are trying to communicate in your school culture. So as you think of your ideal students, think of a time when one of your students, like, ran into the fire when everyone else was running out. All right. And set up the story to have an objective, a conflict, a resolution that's based on a positive trait, right? This is when Luke finally realizes that he has the skills to be a Jedi. And then the positive outcome. What did the hero win? What was the winning moment for the hero? And kind of sketch this out. Because as you create your messaging on campus, you can have a slogan, you can know who your ideal student is, but you also got to be able to tell stories. And if you can tell stories of students, like if you can tell amazing stories, these stories will stick. And they'll stick just like the story of Odysseus or the story of Achilles. All right, we need these stories to stick in your school culture. In fact, we'll go back into the corporate world for another case study, another example. I don't know if you know this, but FedEx has something called the Purple Promise. All of their employees take this promise, and this is what it is. It's right here. I will make every FedEx experience outstanding. That's the Purple Promise. All right. I will make every FedEx experience outstanding. So it's very clear that anybody working for FedEx has to buy into this culture. All right. And I didn't plan it this way, but ironically, when I think of like my shipping experiences, FedEx is always the best, right? Like, they cost more, but I've never felt that they were going to lose my package or they didn't know what was going on. I always believed that they would handle it properly. And they have a great website all about their Purple Promise where they tell all kinds of stories. So I want to tell you a story, and I want to read it here. I want to tell you a story from their Purple Promise. It's about this guy, James Reed. This is his picture. I ripped it off his website, or I ripped it off their website, so that's probably some sort of copyright infringement right there, but hopefully they don't get upset with me because I'm trying to paint them in a good light. But here's what they wrote. On a cold February day in Wisconsin, James Reed was completing his route when his truck stopped running due to the extreme cold. The temperature was 7 degrees with a wind chill of -20, and there were still packages to deliver. So James did what he needed to do to complete his route. He loaded up his handcart and took off on foot to complete 5 delivery stops within an hour. James could have reported the breakdown and waited for assistance. Instead, his dedication and tenacity pushed him to go the extra mile to satisfy his customers. You may not remember other aspects of this outline or this presentation, but you will probably remember James Reed's story. The dude delivered packages on foot when it was a wind chill of -20 degrees. All right? If that isn't making every FedEx experience outstanding, I don't know what is. So how many students are in your campus? 800, 1,200, 1,600, 2,000? Are all 2,000 students as clear as James is on your culture? There was no question that James was going to get those packages delivered because he made the Purple Promise. So we need to make sure that your students feel that same way. And more importantly, that you have stories like this. Like, you're not going to forget James Reed's story. You're not going to forget the story of Odysseus or Achilles. Well, we need to have 3 or 4 or 5 stories of these amazing kids on your campus that are repeatable, that people can buy into. And so when you look at creating messaging, it's important to have these stories. I use it all the time. Just a side note, I use it all the time in our sales process. I've actually done trainings. I did a training at LegalZoom here in Austin not too long ago, where it's kind of like sales using storytelling. And what I found is when I can get a client to listen to a story, like how I just told you the story about Donna. I've told that story before on a sales call, talking to a principal, and it helps them see what I'm trying to communicate. I could tell them, I could say, oh yeah, our assemblies are great. We're going to build school culture. It's going to be awesome. The kids are going to love it. But if I can get them to like envision what Donna's doing, all the kids wearing orange, these be the difference days. I mean, if I could get them to see her picture like you saw, like that's something you're not going to forget. So that's the power of storytelling. We need that to resonate in your school culture. We need that to be happening. So how do we build great messages? Well, you saw this slide earlier. So in summary of this webinar, and again, if you want to read this book, Made to Stick, it's a fabulous book. It's a very easy read. We need to have great slogans that are simple, positive, and direct. 3 or 4 words that really hit home and that students can take ownership of. We need to know who your message is for. All right, we talked about your ideal student. Who is your ideal student? You need to be able to communicate that in 8 to 12 words. And lastly, we need to create a story that showcases your message. All right. Now, having written all this and now kind of spoken in the webinar, I will tell you, I think it'd be great if you had 3 or 4 stories. 3 or 4 examples of kids who are your quote ideal student. So these stories can kind of live on. And but these are things that you need to be thinking about as you build school culture. So how can you learn more? How can you learn more? Well, you're welcome to contact me, obviously, but I do want to offer you a free download of my new book. It's called Building School Culture from the Inside Out. Now, I know some of you on this webinar might have already downloaded the book. Well, if that's true, thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed it. When Ryan and I wrote this book, we tried to keep it simple. Listen, we could have written 150 pages. We could have written 200 pages, but we try to keep this book so simple and just strip it down. Like, what do these people really need to start building school culture immediately? Well, they need a great message, they need great activities, and they need to be getting their people connected on campus. So you can download this book at teentruth.net/schoolculture. All right? teentruth.net/schoolculture, and you can sign up right there. You enter your email and your name, and the system will send you a free PDF download of the book. All right. Now, for those of you, I told you we're going to have more special offers. I want to make this worth your time. For those of you that maybe already have the book, I don't know when you're watching this. I'm making this in the spring semester as we're kind of heading into summertime, heading into planning for next school year. So if you already have the book, I want to invite you to buy some hard copies if you're interested. Now, I can't give it away for free because obviously that would be really difficult on us since we're a small company, and Amazon prints our book, and well, they charge us a few bucks to print it, obviously, and ship it out. So here is a promo code, teacher buy-in, that you can use at teentruth.net/shop. It will give you 50% off the book. It's my hope that you can buy copies of this book and share them with your staff this summer. Like I said, it's an easy read. Teacher buy-in is the code. It will give you 50% off. Maybe you can get some of your teachers reading this book. Maybe you can get some of your student leaders reading it, and that way you can have some conversation around it. The book also has some great worksheet at the end of it that kind of digs deeper into a lot of the conversation that we're having. So that's one special offer we want to give you. We have one more coming up, so just hang on. And this book will obviously teach you your student ownership map, your message, your activities, your people. MAP, right there. What is your student ownership map? You should have this mapped out, just like the Goonies knew where One-Eyed Willie's treasure was. You need to know where your treasure's at, and you need a map to get there. Well, this book can help you, and hopefully this webinar has helped you. So one more amazing offer I want to give you, but first I want to explain how we can help you. All right. Obviously, as CEO of Teen Truth, I believe in our programming, and I know that we can help you in your school culture building efforts. So I don't want to spend a lot of time on this because this isn't a sales presentation. I really want to do a lot of teaching on this webinar. But 3 programs that we have I wanted to call your attention to. The first is our, our school culture workshop. Our school culture workshop is an event that I developed specifically for educators and administrators to come together for 3 or 4 hours and talk about what's going on campus. Like you can see, what are students dealing with on campus? Social media, poor social school skills, gender identity, poor performance, respect for adults looks like a big one on this lady's campus. Okay, so we really want to take the time to have those conversations and then build our student ownership map to help alleviate these issues, right? So that's what the school culture workshop is all about. It's great as an in-service. It's ideal for maybe 40 to 50 people because it is very discussion based, but it's something I want to invite you to inquire about if you're interested. The other one, of course, is our assemblies. You can see me here speaking at a middle school, but I'm not our only speaker. We have fabulous assembly speakers that really motivate your students and get them thinking differently. What's unique about assemblies is when they're done right, they can be critical in driving school culture. Like when you think about Donna, the reason why she said assemblies didn't work is because she was probably talking about the magician or the comedian or the typical motivational speaker that's kind of coming in there and talking all about themselves. And, those assemblies are great. I remember having those assemblies when I was in high school. They're great. But they don't always stick in the way we want them to. And they don't always help with building school culture. So, the hypnotist and the magician, they're awesome. But if you want to do an assembly around school culture, well, it might be important to mix in a program like Teen Truth or Rachel's Challenge or I Can Help, programs that you can really build around. All right, so our assemblies can really help you with that. And then lastly is our Leadership Summit. This is one of my favorite programs. We call it our Difference Maker Summit. And this is where we pull student leaders into a workshop environment, just like we do with the adults. What's really cool about this is a lot of it's actually very similar, what we do with the kids and what we do with the adults. But same thing. They brainstorm on the critical issues. They talk about activities and campaigns and initiatives that they can come up with to help alleviate those issues. And they build an action plan. They build that student ownership map. They build those activities to take back to campus. This is a great event to do at school. It's a great way to kind of pull what I like to call alternative leaders into the conversation. I said earlier, it's like that student council kid is great. Let's get them in there. They're important. But what about that gang member? He's a leader too. What about that mean girl? She's a leader too. What about that outcast? We need to get their voice into this conversation also. Sometimes the student council kids aren't really always focused on those voices, right? So the summit's a great opportunity to pull all kinds of different leaders into this conversation. So we can do this at your school. It's ideal for maybe 50 to 100 kids at the school. We've also done it at the district level before, where we can do anywhere from 100 to 300 kids. Obviously, the bigger you get, the less interaction you have. We really like our summits and our workshops to be full of work. So these programs are programs that can help. This is a slide that basically says exactly what I just said. Our assemblies, our leadership summits, our curriculum, which I didn't focus on today, which is the Rising Up coaching program, is great for building peer-to-peer relationships. And ultimately, we want to help you build your student ownership map. So what's a special offer? Well, I want to offer you a $1,000 discount on any of our programs. Now that's $1,000 off the normal price for our program. Most of our programs run about $3,000, $3,000 to $5,000 depending on what service you're buying and what program you're getting. But as someone who listened to this webinar and watched it the whole way through, I told you I was going to make it worth your time. So I'm giving you $1,000. All right, this is our gift to you. If you book our program, we will give you a $1,000 discount. The way you can get that discount is you can contact me today at jc@teentruth.net. Just mention that you saw the discount and you heard about the discount on this webinar. We will run this discount all the way, let me think. I'm doing this right now in the spring of 2017. We'll run this all the way till the end of the year. So this $1,000 discount will be good all the way till December 31st of 2017. All right, so any programs you book from now till then, we'll offer you that discount. So you can contact me today. Don't miss this special offer. This is a great opportunity for you to build culture. You know, you can do these things yourself. You can host the assemblies and the leadership summits yourself. You can build the peer-to-peer curriculum, or you can have us do it. We can help you. We want to serve you, like I said in the beginning. Our goal, our only goal, is to help you empower student voice and build school culture on campus. So contact me now at jc@teentruth.net. Also, look for future webinars. If you got this offering, you're probably already on our email list, or if you're not, please request access to our email list, because I do plan to make webinars on your activities and your people. You know, as a therapist, there's a lot of stuff I want to say here on how to really drive relationships on campus. And of course, with activities, they are so, so important with regards to driving school culture. So again, we'll leave the information up here for you, jc@teentruth.net. You can also call me directly at 818-237-5082. And you can find more information about all of our programs at teentruth.net. If you have any questions, unfortunately, you can't interact right now because this is pre-recorded, but you can email me, or you can find me on Facebook, or you can find me on LinkedIn. I don't really do Twitter that much, and I don't do Instagram, but I am on Facebook and LinkedIn, and that's JC Pohl, Pohl. So I want to thank you for taking the time to listen to this. Hopefully you got a lot of value out of it, and hopefully you're inspired right now to go back, really start building school culture from the inside out, and really start focusing on what your message is, who your ideal student is, and what kind of stories you're going to tell. What kind of stories will allow your school culture to echo for eternity. Thanks so much for your time. I appreciate you and all that you do.